instead of being set on a hard static number of old dungeons to bring in, season 2 and beyond, you maybe rotate out 2. It doesn't have to be 4. Right. You know, maybe 6 dungeons are fucking bangers, and why would we get rid of them? Right. Yep. But 2 are stinkers. So we're going to bring back, 2 dungeons from Legion or 2 dungeons from BFA or whatever. So I just really disagree with not getting to play the 8 new dungeons in season 1 and plus. All right. Hello, everybody. We are here for episode 2 of our World of Warcraft podcast, the Suboptimal podcast. I am joined again by Hakkd Gaming. Hakkd, how's it going?
Oh, it's going.
Good. You ready to talk some Mythic Plus and some profession changes?
Let's do it.
All right. Let's hop in here. For those who may be new today or watching on YouTube later, Hakkd and I raid in a pretty casual raiding guild. Do a little Mythic Plus, like to talk about the game, play off meta stuff. So we're going to run through some Dragonflight stuff and then be talking about kind of wish listy Mythic Plus in the future, kind of stuff we hope Blizzard does and changes that they make. But we have very different opinions on the changes that they should be making. So hopefully maybe somebody from Blizzard will watch and implement a few of them. So let's hop right into the profession changes here. So we touched on it a little bit on our first episode last week, but there are massive changes coming to professions, way more than I think I was expecting. I don't know about you, Hakkd, if you were kind of expecting this overhaul.
I was expecting somewhere kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
But definitely bigger than I thought.
So the 3 main bullet points from this blue post today are crafting orders, which is essentially like a modified auction house where you say, I need this item made, and you can have somebody with that profession craft the item for you, but it can be soulbound. So there's going to be materials that you get that only you can get, can't buy them, which I think is a good thing. Plus whatever the crafter has to have on them to create the item. There's profession specializations, so you're going to be able to kind of specify within the profession what you want to be good at. If you're Shadowlands only player, it's kind of like picking a piece of armor for a legendary that you wanted to max out first and level it to, the different ranks.
Crafter, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then crafting and gathering, they're adding quality to most, it seems like, of the crafted items, and some of the gathering items. Essentially, if it's part of a gathering profession, then it'll have a potential to have quality. If it is gathering that anybody can do, so any meat that you find, fishing, that will not have quality.
I wonder about cloth, because everybody can find cloth.
I believe cloth does not. I think it actually says it in the bottom.
Okay.
When the meat and potatoes of this post gets there. Right. So those are kind of the 3 big changes, but there's a lot of detail that Blizzard put through. We're not going to go through the whole thing, so we just kind of wanted to bullet point it. So here's the new screen for crafting orders. You'll see that there's the provided reagents can either be provided by the person that is the crafter or the person requesting the crafting order, as well as optional reagents. And then there's a commission cost, and you basically create the order. So it's very similar to the auction house.
Yep.
This person has 1 million gold. Good for them. There's optional reagents, like I said, depending on the recipe, and that kind of will give you your ability to modify the items. And there's a the quality aspect, I believe, is where a lot of that will come into play to increase your chances of crafting better quality items. So far, I like these changes. I think the crafting orders are going to be really cool and make it better for crafters to make a little bit of money, hopefully.
Oh, definitely. And I think it creates a sort of end game for the people that really do enjoy this part of the game. Playing the auction house, playing professions, and making money. So I really like their goal with it, and honestly, it's not too far fetched. Like, I don't think it's too tall of an order. Like, this will make people feel special especially at the beginning, where it's like, I'm the only guy on the server right now that can craft plate helms.
Right.
At this, like, and there is definitely going to be some identity there.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. I think it's something that the game has needed. I think they are stealing a little bit of what Final Fantasy does well with their crafting, as well as this quality aspect, which I think is really cool. So let's touch on that a little bit. The profession specializations, I didn't go into too much. It sounds pretty self-explanatory. You're going to just get to pick how you want to identify yourself in your given profession.
Well, so what I got from them talking about this the first time is there's going to be like a talent tree for these, and that's going to be your specialization. So you're actually going to get a tree, and you can take points here and there and specialize that way.
They talk about it a little bit in this quality portion. I think your specialization is also going to give you a better chance to craft higher quality. So you, even if you don't specialize into whatever, you're a blacksmith and you're an armor specialization, but you want to craft a weapon, it's not going to lock you out of crafting weapons, but your chances of creating like a tier 5 are going to be lower and harder.
Well, and you'd assume that you could still build up to that at some point too. You just have to put in the work for that slot and all of that.
So here are the 5 tiers, tier 1 through tier 5. Very original, very creative. I would imagine that's probably like a placeholder, but we'll see. For gear, the quality of your item is actually going to be an item level increase. Numbers obviously not set in stone here, but what they currently have is basically a 10 item level difference between tier 1 and tier 5. I guess, what are your thoughts on if this were to go live in this state? What do you think about that gap and what the quality is going to mean for gear?
So yeah, I mean, I think that gap is fine. I could see them even going a little less with the difference, just because of, like, you could treat it as a 7 item level difference because they do that all the time, right? Like, I think 7 and 13 item level increments, it seems like they're sticking with that system as far as gearing goes in Dragonlance, and I think that this should mimic that.
Yeah.
So I think that that's an easy, just keep it as close together as possible, because they did note that they want it to matter enough for it to be worth doing, but not be garbage if it's like tier 1, right?
Right. And they have to balance like the cost of making a tier 5, right? And then versus the cost of making a tier 1. So it has to feel significant enough to justify the costs of the tier 5, but it can't be too powerful where, and we'll get into it a little bit, where you can just replace a good chunk of your items, as you'll see in a little bit here, with this ultra powerful gear. As for consumables, the quality is going to be a little bit different. And it doesn't sound like it's finalized yet, but it's either going to be like a more powerful effect, longer duration, more charges. And I think the intention here is, your lower quality items are going to cost less. Your higher quality items are going to cost more, which is fine. But I think the nice part about that is your alt raid knight. Well, you don't have to slam a tier 5 potion on your alt raid knight, right? You can slam like a tier 3 or a tier 2. So your consumable costs theoretically go down, which I think is actually really cool.
I think that's super good. And it's just a thing, like, okay, well, these sell for less, but I can pump out quantity.
Hmm.
And if it's things like potions, especially, it's like, yeah, I'm just doing like 10 keys or my weekly 15s. I'm not going to use like my really good shit. But, you know, you go through potions like that. So I think that that's an awesome way to make money. And I think it's an awesome way for different people to make money with the same profession, with the same item
Yep.
in different ways. And I think that that's super cool.
I was gonna say, what
Um,
if you're a returning player? You don't have the mats for tier fives. You know, in the current state, you look at like, oh, these leveling blues have no value if you're a new player, and it's like impossible to build up to that. But like with this, especially if you take like alchemy, your tier one potions, tier two potions that are probably pretty easy to craft. Well, you can build up a little bankroll. You still feel useful to your guild or your group because you can
yeah, definitely.
still have a reason to use those. I think I don't really see any downside to that besides we're gonna have to farm more, I guess. Like,
Yeah, the only thing that's weird about the gear though is that adds so many like different little increments of gear,
mhm.
which I is probably not a bad thing. I just it'll definitely be a little bit weird. Like, I guess it's not that outside of like the way the Mythic Plus gear works with the increments.
I,
Now that
I
I think about it, that's really not that weird.
they're close, and it's going to depend, I guess, on
Oh
what
yeah,
the markets do, right? Like if there's a
right.
massive difference between like the tier 1 and the tier 5 in terms of price, I guess you can weigh that for yourself. Like, do I need to buy all tier 5 pieces, or can I get away with like a tier 1 or a tier 2 for now? And
One thing that I do want to point out about you saying like um how you can just kind of kit your character out. Kind of can't though. These are soulbound, so it's good to keep that in mind. That
yeah,
like these are soulbound items that obviously you won't be able to craft all of this on your own.
right.
Um, so in a case where you're needing a soulbound piece of gear crafted, you're gonna have to provide the soulbound material,
Right.
which they're talking about. You know, deeper into this, it's gonna come from dungeons, PvP raids. Um, so you're still gonna have to do the content to get these items,
Mm.
these reagents. Um, so in that case, I think it's fine. I think our big worry before was that you can just go straight to the auction house on a character and kit yourself the fuck out.
Yeah.
If this is the case, this is fine. Like you should have to play a little bit, and you should be able to find certain rewards, and it's kind of like a bad luck protection, just on the auction house.
Yeah, I think I want to dig in a little bit on the gear once we get to that part at the bottom here. I think for the consumables, they have a nice little example of like
Hmm.
tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You get a little increase in inspiration, which I believe is this pink bar up here, or oh no, it's right here underneath crafting details. It shows your inspiration. So
Right.
like you get your difficulty crafting skill, and then um in this article, if y'all want to read the full thing, I'll actually post it in chat real quick. um Basically it sounds like you're gonna know what your quality minimum is,
Right.
and then
Yeah,
there's a
you'll never
chance
lose.
you'll never go lower, but there's a chance that you could craft higher, so it's almost like Titan forged crafting.
Yeah. Yeah.
um which I think again it's pretty cool. I mean, I know a lot of people, if you say Titan forging, kind of leaves a bad taste in their mouth if they were anti Titan forging people, but I think this is just good in general all around. They're making a big change to flasks, and I think that is, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Essentially, flasks are now only going to last for 30 minutes,
No.
and
There's
or I'm sorry,
flasks.
files
Yeah,
are
so
the new
there's a
thing.
new
Yeah.
thing that kind of work in tandem. You can use flasks or files. So again, like it's kind of the same thing as what we were talking about before with you know, oh, I'm going to use lesser potions or whatever, like lower tier potions for this alt raid night or something. You can do the same for these, like, oh, well, I'm starting a key, and that way I'm not using an hour-long flask and then wasting like 15 minutes of it while we're moving on to the next key or whatever. I can just use this 30-minute flask, and it's like I'm using up all of the time or I'm using less, whatever.
Yeah. And
So I think that's good.
they do state here you can actually drink 2 together to get the duration of a flask. Right. The flexibility I think is cool. Like you're saying, you're not going to waste as much time. They have 3 examples. This is just a flat verse use. Numbers obviously TBD. Standing stationary will increase int for 240 for 5 seconds or over 5 seconds. And then if you move, you consume the effect, but then you get 500 speed. And then this last one, int is increased by 225 when you're at least 10 yards from allies.
I wonder if they're just going with the same thing with flasks as well, or if like flasks are still going to be main stat, and then these are just like extra. You can use this instead of a flask.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It does say that cauldrons will not grant files. They're going to grant potions. So I wonder if files are replacing. I mean, it says the file's an innovative replacement for the flask. So I think flasks are going away and we're just going to get files. And I also wonder if at some point they let you like pop 2 different ones. Because right now it sounds like you have to pop 2 of the same for the hour. I wonder if at some point they'll change it so you can have 1 of each.
Okay. Yeah, so I missed out on that key little detail.
Yeah. Yeah, 500 speed. People are going to be zooming.
Zooming, yeah.
Just wait, Rad. You're going to pop one, and then you're going to just dash straight off the edge because you're going to move too fast in a direction, and then you're going to Demon Hunter dash off the edge of something.
I'm hauling ass. Look at me go.
Look at me go. But I think this is cool. I like that they're kind of attacking what is a stale element in, you know, main stat flasks and doing something a little bit more interesting. And since these are only 30-minute duration, it won't feel so bad. Like, okay, this fight, I know I don't have a ton of movement and I can get this like stationary int buff. This one on this fight, I'm going to be separated for a lot of the time, or it doesn't matter if I'm not stacked up. All right, I can slam this, 225 permanent as long as I don't stand on anybody.
Right.
So I think that is actually going to be pretty cool, and it's another layer to like min max for.
Yeah,
raids.
and it could add a layer of decision making and fun, but it could also just be like, oh well, these are the best on this fight, just whatever. Like if the gameplay isn't impactful enough,
yeah,
people would probably just prefer like I'd rather just slap on a fucking main stat buff and
right. Well, hopefully the more dynamic stuff is worthwhile,
Right.
All right, let's go back up. Let's don't really care so much about the additional crafting stats. These are like for the actual crafters themselves. So here is the quality philosophy. So again, lower tier recipes for leveling gear, starter potions, you learn them. Halfway through leveling your actual skill level for the profession, if it's a crafting profession, you will be able to have all of the recipes. And so that I guess their thought process is it still feels rewarding while you're leveling to make stuff for people for like the leveling gear and stuff like that. For the big thing from this article is that at max quality, a chest will be able to be crafted that has the equivalent to that of mythic raids. You would basically, the crafter would have to be fully specialized into that gear type, use all top quality reagents, both required and optional, and then use the best profession gear you can find to basically increase your chance at crafting a tier 5. I would also assume that's going to come with a hefty requirement from the person asking for it to be made,
Oh yeah,
in
definitely.
terms of those soulbound materials, which I think is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, because it also ensures like, okay, well, this material that is necessary to make this thing, it only comes from Mythic grade, so at least it's guaranteeing that the person getting this item is playing at that level to deserve that gear, and it's
right.
not just like I'm a shitter and I play around in the normal raid, but this is how I get my Mythic gear in 5 different slots. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
And to your point earlier, you're not just going to be able to, roll into a server with a couple million gold and just buy your gear.
hmm
So for the way that the system in right now, you're going to be able to wear 5 pieces of crafted gear. Two-handed weapons count as 2. Um, and that, from what we talked about last week, we were like, oh yeah, 1 is enough. 1 is enough. Uh,
right.
but I think between the cost to the person getting the gear being soulbound
hmm
materials from whichever activity, I think 5 is actually okay. I think
5 is
this.
okay with that being like you have to have these things.
Yep.
Because I was thinking like 2 maximum, but that's thinking like, oh, it can just be up on the auction house and you can just buy it at any time if you have the gold. But that being the case where the only way you can get it at this level is by like through the crafting order system,
Yep.
that's fine. Yeah.
The starting item level is a range near normal raids. I think that's, I think kind of like what's happening right now in terms of like the non 262 uh gear. Like that's pretty close
Yeah.
to what the system is now. So that's not a huge change. They are soulbound, so they have to be crafted through crafting orders. They will require, like we said, those soulbound reagents. I think what this is going to do uh, fills in the gaps that the randomness of the vault doesn't hit, and just the bad luck of raid drops.
I
I
think this is only going to be like for players like us, we're only going to look to this system if we're like, dude, this fucking belt. Like, I
mhm,
need a belt. Fuck, it's been 6 weeks. Where is my belt?
yeah,
And, now it's like, okay, I've been raiding, I've been doing content that would reward me with something of this nature, and it's just not fucking hitting. But I have the materials, like, because I do this content, so I have these soulbound items that I can use to use this system. Um,
there
so
are
I don't think you can ever get a hold of a piece of gear from this system
belt.
that you're not deserving of. Like
Yeah. No, and what I do hope though, and I don't know if they touched on it in here, there is going to be like incremental, it sounds like, or quest locked progress on the crafters. Like, okay, if you can only earn and craft so many pieces uh this week or whatever. So I think
right.
they are time gating it a little bit. But if I had one suggestion for this to make this more alt friendly, is make those soulbound items account bound. So it makes playing alts easier.
Right. And it would also maybe just feel more rewarding that like, okay, I do have a blacksmithing character and I do have a tailorer. So like I can make a mage and give it some gear,
Yeah. Because
using my own things. I
otherwise,
agree.
if there's what happens once I'm, I've got my 5 heroic pieces because I'm not doing mythic or whatever, or I do make mythic pieces because, I run high end mythic plus. Well, I've got my bis now and I keep doing this activity and I keep getting these materials. So like, what do I do with them if I
Pretty
can't?
much the age old like please make some of this shit account bound or give us something to transfer it over while it's still current. It's the same thing with Soul Cinders, Soul Ash, and now um what's the fucking
Flux,
shit?
flux,
Flux, Cosmic Flux.
flux.
It's like my shaman has 20k flux and there's absolutely nothing I need it for, but then it's like I can't I can't make legendaries on my demon hunter without farming out cosmic flux. So I have 20,000 that's sitting on my shaman that I just can't use for anything. But I want to use it for other. I've earned it.
Right.
The fuck, I've earned it. Let me use it.
I'd even be fine if they taxed it, like in Korthia. Like you lost a little bit when you transferred your stuff.
That's totally cool. That just needs to be in there while it's current and new.
Yep.
Not the next patch. Because I think they put out a post sometime this week talking about how Flux is going to be. It's probably just going to be on a vendor or something, but that's coming in the next season.
Just a Flux dump.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah,
it just needs to come now.
Right. Yeah, and I hope that they've learned between that and, people I think are pretty vocal about that. And then hopefully they learned their lesson with the thing that you craft tier gear out of in ZM that I'm blanking on the name of.
Oh yeah, the catalyst.
The catalyst that like it feels good on your alt that like, okay, I wasn't playing this character when the catalyst came out, but I was still accumulating charges. Right. So I didn't fall behind or feel like I'm falling behind. As long as they learn those two lessons, I think this could be maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but like this could be the best part of the changes that they make for the game, like the health of the game.
Yeah, and as long as they do it, like I think their account-wide philosophy just needs to. We need to see that because they've already released, like they have a very big account-wide philosophy going into Dragonflight, and all they need to do is show it in these posts. So I think they really need to touch on it because it's something that we're accustomed to not having it, so we're worried about it. So
you don't see why currencies aren't account-wide, Rad? Yeah, I mean, they
need to be.
I'll play devil's advocate to myself. The only reason I think that they would say no to that is that then you could just transfer your shit around and never need to use like the crafting orders, because you could just have characters of every single profession and never need to interact with another player who's, this or that. But I don't know how many.
Generally, I think what he's talking about too is shit like Cosmic Flux, where it's not like the only thing you gain out of that is being able to make legendaries on an alt right away, or craft your tier. But it's like there's already things in place that keep you make you have to play the character before you can do that anyway.
Right.
So, which I think is fair. Like you should have to play the character and not just fully kit yourself out. So they need to be careful where they do that. Like you said, I can just have all these professions and all these characters and never have to interact with the system, and I can just jump around and kit my characters out.
Yeah, that'd be my only thing, I guess, could maybe be bad about allowing the soulbound materials to be account bound instead. Is just like, oh, well, my shaman's all full, I'm going to go play my pally. Well, I just make my pally a blacksmith and level it up a little bit, but then I can just mass transfer all this mythic level material without actually playing through the content or even interacting with another crafter, because I can just do it myself. And that's why I think maybe the tax on the currency.
But I think you wouldn't even really be able to do that because, I mean, judging by the amount of work that it seems will go into that, like that specialty item or whatever, like you're not going to be able to maintain that on that many characters for that to matter.
True. I guess you'd have to you'd only be able to spec into one piece. You'd probably still have to,
like you'd have to play, but you'd have to play that as your end all be all end game. And if you're doing that, you're not also mythic rating on these tunes. Right. No.
We'll see. I think
you're overall playing the game different,
Yeah. I think it's a good change overall. Little like tweaks, obviously, aside. I think this is awesome. I was not super pumped for professions because I didn't think that the work order or crafting order was enough. But now that they've kind of fleshed out the rest of the system, I think this is fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I think it's really cool. My only closing thought on the profession system would be I really hope somewhere in their little talent tree or whatever they have planned for that, there's some fucking passive like character power perks in these professions because we
Yeah.
touched on that last week. I think that shit was super cool. That's the only time I've ever cared about professions. Is sure I'll level my blacksmithing if I'm getting like, or my mining, whatever, if I'm getting some stamina.
Yeah.
Or
Oh man, I get
I'm
20
getting
extra
this cool
stamina.
little
Sweet.
heal. Like I really like this life bloom heal or whatever the fuck it was called. Like I'll level my herbalism for that. Make me care about this shit as like a progression minded
Yeah.
player.
Yep. I think this is good. All right.
That's a big thing I'm hoping for.
Rad said, yeah, don't mean stuff. I just mean like flux to spend flux on a box of mats to make a Lego, but then I need to grind more flux to make a Lego on my other two. Yeah, yeah. And that's kind of what we're talking about and kind of what I was bringing up with the soulbind materials that like, they should be transferable, but I also see a world where they say no just because you can kind of circumvent interacting with pieces of the system if you were able to just stock up on your main, transfer to some alts, and it's also going to depend on costs and like, we have to see the full system at work before really I would lean though to wanting account bound things to make the game as alt friendly as possible.
It's not even a thing where you like try to stockpile on your main. It's just the fact that it's your main and that's what you're doing everything on, right? So it's like
inevitably it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to be stocked up and have nothing to spend that shit on anymore. So it's like once that hits, even if they time gate it, they can time gate that shit a little bit and say like, okay, 8 weeks, we would assume that like people on their mains aren't going to have any use for this resource anymore. So now we're going to unlock it. But have a plan for that in mind. Like having the creation catalyst going forward, at least in season 4, like I think that is great because it's there, it's implemented, and I think it'll be coming out sooner or it's just going to be out right away. But in any case, like that plan is already in place and it's awesome. And
go ahead.
I think it's great.
Yeah, I do have one more thing, and it's not really related to us, but since we're big fans of the race and the Mythic raid stuff, I wonder what this does for the big guilds, the Echoes and the Liquids of the world. Like, are they going to hire crafters, or are they going to like partner with a crafting only guild? Like, because that theoretically can become a thing now. You just have a guild of people who own, that's what they want to do in the game. They want to do professions and craft, and
they're just going to have buddies helping them out.
Yeah,
definitely.
But I wonder if they would just payroll a couple people to just be crafters. Like,
probably,
Probably.
Like I mean, shit, if that's going to be just as important as like an analyst position or something, like they straight up payroll people to go watch their VODs back and shit and just analyze other people's streams. So they would definitely pay for players to just be on crafting.
For them. Rad's going to start a crafting only guild on Illidan to work with Liquid. I do also wonder if this means that raid BOEs go away.
Yeah, we'll see.
Because that was such a huge income source and a huge pain point, I think, for a lot of those guilds. And then like for guilds like us, like they're not super impactful. They don't drop often enough and they're too expensive for really, like, it's cool if you get one, but they're usually itemized pretty shittily.
Right. But also for a guild like ours, like we're not going to gain that much benefit from it.
Right.
As where they would. So they want to buy it up early.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's super important and really frustrating for them because it's so expensive. Yeah. And then you get people who are just forming trash groups to farm trash to make some money. But then for the general majority of the population, like they're not even that good in non-day one content. So like, why even have them in the game? Like, just drop transmogs instead. That would be way more interesting than
definitely
needing to actually get power progression gear. All right, I think that pretty much takes care of profession stuff. So let's get into what I know you're very passionate and ready to talk about. So let's hear your ideas for Mythic Plus changes. I don't know if you want to take your document and kind of section it off. We can talk a little bit about at a time. And I also have a set of ideas that I sent over to you, so I guess we can kind of like juxtapose them against each other a little bit as we go, or
For sure, that's fine. Yeah, because my main point, so I've got them like set apart fairly decently, and I think you'll definitely have an instant argument just with the my first little paragraph here. But fortified and tyrannical, I say keep them. So I know that a huge part of the community will say like, "Fuck tyrannical, get rid of tyrannical." I'm the same. I agree in its current state, but I don't think that it's a dead affix. I think that they should keep them, um, because fortified feels fine. If anything, we can nerf that a little bit to make it a little bit less impactful. Um, but tyrannical, the only reason that it's such a big deal is because it's so fucking noticeable. It's so impactful on the key.
yeah,
And we're talking about big health pools. And then when we're talking percentages, like the scaling of the key plus a percentage, like that's just the number that it scales up gets bigger and bigger. So
yeah,
it doesn't really need to be impactful in lower keys. People that would notice it in lower keys because they're playing at that level, they don't do as much damage, whatever. They're still going to notice it at like the brink of whatever content they're pushing. Um, but I do still think the dichotomy of like fortified weeks, tyrannical weeks, I think the changing difference from week to week is still nice, and I think that that's still a good way to tackle it. But when I'm talking about nerf tyrannical, I mean, let's see, it's 30% increased health and 15% increased damage currently is what tyrannical is. Nerf both of them bitches down to 10%. So tyrannical buffs boss health and damage by 10%, no higher than that,
yeah.
right? Like, and I think that that's enough, especially the higher the key gets, you're still gonna notice it. You're still gonna notice 10%,
Well, because it
but
still
it's not
scales,
gonna
right? Like,
exactly.
yeah,
So I don't think the only issue with tyrannical right now is, you're getting into whatever content you're pushing. So like for me and you, it'd be like a 22. Probably the issues that like the big high end Mythic Plus community deals with, we might start witnessing
what
it
up,
at like
ride?
a 24 level in
Yeah,
our current gear and all of that, but it's like the worry is 5 minute long boss fights and group wide AoE unavoidable damage one shotting you
yeah,
if you don't play perfectly. So like it just, I think a small nerf to the damage increase and a large nerf to the health increase helps that. Nobody wants to sit there and fight a boring ass dungeon boss for 5 minutes. They're not that good.
right.
Dungeon bosses are not good enough to be fighting for that long. So I think that's the issue. I still think that uh, the
Or,
idea is
oh, sorry.
works.
Yeah, I think I don't hate them. So like my ideas, I had two separate ideas for tyrannical and fortified. Either if you're gonna keep them, either in their current state or a nerf state, or just basically mirrored from what they are now with very little changes. I think I'd rather just see them put into the pool of possible affixes. Get rid of the set like at 4 or whatever. You always know what your week is.
Mm-hmm.
Like my large like high level overviews, I like randomness in the keys because I think it means that on weeks like right now just have like dead weeks that most people don't want to run because it's just a really shitty combination of three.
Right.
Whereas if you have random, yeah, you may get some like bad ones here and there, but then you can just like, okay, we just run the key and we get something new. And maybe it's a good key, maybe it's not a good key, but that like for the full week, it's just a dead week.
Well, so the full week being a dead week, that is a good point, but the rest, like, so I would tend to disagree with that just because it's definitely nice, like, having a play style for that week. and just not knowing what the next key is gonna be, like I wouldn't just especially the game in its current state with like, oh well, this week I'm gonna run this covenant with this build setup because this is how we deal with it, and then you fuck up. Like, so I think that's the issue. What if you fuck up that set of affixes, and then it's gonna roll random again? So it's like, oh well, shit. I just came up with a good idea
Yeah.
to. I think knowing what you're going into and being able to especially practice it over the week feels better to me rather than it being just straight up random where it's like, okay, well, by the time I get this set of affixes again, I don't it's still hard. I'm
Yeah.
still not going
Right.
to be able to deal with it because I've been playing other affixes since the last time I fucked it up. So, I haven't gotten that repetitive um, reps. I haven't been able to get reps in
Yeah.
to learn how to deal with this and grow as a player. So I think that would be the major issue, and I think that would be too much of a loss for that to work out.
That was like my huge like Bong Cloud take. Like,
Right,
let's
right.
just random.
No,
Let's
I
let's turn
remember
this.
reading it in
Yeah.
the thing. I'm like, I mean,
Let's
interesting,
let's
but I
turn this
don't
into
know
like
that it works.
D3 greater rifts. Like
Right.
like let's just make
Right.
it full random. You don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But I think on the I do like the idea of nerfing Tyrannical and Fort. My other idea was just for changes instead of just straight damage basically for each of them, make them interact with the dungeon. So like Tyrannical, instead of boss health increase, damage increase, it spawns like multiple copies of the same boss that are smaller. That
Right.
so you have to deal with double the amount of mechanics, but the bosses have less health and they do less damage overall. I think that could
Mhm.
make for some like crazy interesting boss fights, and really force people to like get good. But I think if that was a change, and the other one for Fort would be mobs can pull a random ability from either like a set of abilities that Blizzard has determined, or from just one of the other mobs in the dungeon. So like
Mhm.
what the mobs do, kind of what to expect, but you don't know which mobs are going to have it. I think though you would make then those affixes the actual like highest affix, because they would instantly become the most challenging, I think.
Right. And I could see that being like a cool seasonal thing, but I don't know. I still think like Fort and Tyrannical are in a good state. They just Fortified, I think, feels fine. If anything, just nerf it by a little bit. Like, don't buff it by any. Tyrannical, I think the idea holds fine. Uh, Actually, that bit of just interacting with the dungeon more, I think it actually kind of sparked an idea for me that kind of already works out with the layout that I had planned. Um, and part of it was when I was thinking about the affixes that I had in mind, which, spoiler alert, more of like a kiss curse system with the affix that we have. Um, but I'm reading through them, like some of these like wouldn't impact boss fights that much at all, and some of these wouldn't really impact trash that much at all. And when I read through yours, I'm like, fuck. Not all of them have to interact with like a fortified week, right? Like, okay, I get to play with this on fort weeks, but on a tie week, this this affix is gonna be fucking dope, you know. And I think that could make it to where you could have the same affix back to back weeks, just paired with fortified and then paired with tyrannical.
Yeah.
Um, which I think would really help with the 12-week rotation, which I'm getting ahead of myself. That'll make sense
Yeah. Go
a
ahead
little
and
bit later.
go ahead
But
with your next. I think I like your changes. I think they actually would increase like the amount of good weeks, because the scaling would be not as bad.
yeah.
So
Well, also the reason that weeks are bad are not necessarily because of one bad affix. The reason weeks are bad is because of a really bad affix combo.
right.
Um,
Yeah, tie in itself is not bad.
yeah,
Like
right.
it's just because it's mixed with something that just is miserable. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Um So yeah, I'm all for nerfing it. I'm all for making it so that I think the biggest problem with Ty on the bad weeks is just on higher keys, Ty just grinds keys to a halt.
Oh yeah, it's just the health part.
Mm-hmm.
Like the damage part is scary, but it's only scary because the boss is lasting so fucking long. So you have to survive
Yeah.
more and more of these one shots, right? So I don't even think the damage necessarily needs to get nerfed, which is why it's like, okay, 5% nerf to the percent, whatever. Not a big deal. It's just 30% extra health is insane.
Yeah.
Nerf that shit down to 10%. Boom.
Yep.
We're good. +4 affixes. So the first affix we get on a key, straight up, get rid of. There should not be two like regular affixes on the key because we already have Fort or Tyrannical week by week. Then we have the +4 affix. Then we have the +7 affix. Then we have the seasonal affix. Seasonal affix is fucking dope. They've done a really, really good job with those. So that stays, right? Right now we have 4 affixes that are on a key. We could get away with having 3.
Yeah.
3 is plenty, you know. And I think even like I would argue that 3 random is still bad, right? But I like the fact that the seasonal is always static. It's always there. Fort and Tyrannical are static-ish, but you know, you don't have to play them every week back to back. Like you get a break in between. And then the +7 affixes
Right.
would be what changes. So straight up get rid of +4. Now +7 affixes. I will also note that I think this is good too, because like it gives more time for people to learn the base dungeon at increasing difficulties in Mythic Plus before you keep adding layers and layers of shit. So like the +4 affix. So now it would just open you being able to play the base dungeon on +4, +5, +6, and that way you can actually learn what's dangerous before you start adding extra layers. So +7, we can come up with Kiss Curse affixes. And so I think what this does, I actually stole this idea from like Dorky and Yummy. I've heard them talking about it a little bit. One of these.
You didn't steal shit, bro. That's all you.
Well, so the Sanguine was an idea of Yummy TV. So I kind of just took that and ran with them. Like, oh, I fucking love this idea. And just the idea that we don't go into a week of Mythic Plus saying, okay, what affixes do we have to play this week? Turn it into what affixes do we get to play this week?
Yeah.
You know, make us excited. We're not just playing against the affix the entire time. We're playing with the affix. So Sanguine, we get the Sanguine puddles. Upon death, enemies leave behind a red pool for 15 seconds. For the first 10 seconds, these will do just what they do. They damage us, they heal the enemies. But for the last 5 seconds, they turn green or blue, and they damage enemies and heal us. So it kind of gives you that thing, like, that would be fun as fuck to play around, like, your whole group, the tank kiting back in to Sanguine, or using your Nox to get people back, you know, get things back into the Sanguine pools now that they're doing damage. Like, that would be a huge amount of gameplay and counterplay to the affix. And I would enjoy the fuck out of Sanguine. Like, the annoyance of having to kite out of it and risking some Sanguine healing, whatever, that gets reversed when at least half of the time that a pool is down, you're getting a benefit from it.
Right.
So I think that outweighs the annoyance and makes it fun to play.
Before you do the rest of yours, I think with your idea to remove the +4 and just cut down to 3, I think would have to have the Kiss Curse to make it still feel interesting every week. Like, because then it kind of feels like 4 affixes again, right? Because you have, like, we all know what Sanguine does, right? But now this new Sanguine, it's almost like it's its own affix.
Right, exactly.
The kiss part of it.
Yeah. for sure. And that's why you know, we don't need +4 and +7. We have these two affixes that are both Kiss Curse, or just one of them's Kiss Curse. You don't remember what does what.
Right.
Like, you know, part of it you are playing against, so it feels bad, and part of it feels better because you're playing around it and it's fun and takes some skill, whatever. But yeah, it's definitely it would have too many layers if we implemented this without getting rid of the +4 affix.
Right. You just it would add too much if there was still the +4.
Definitely. And so to my point about like high weeks versus fortified weeks with these affixes, like sanguine would be a little bit harder to play with on tyrannical weeks. Like, how do you get max value out of that for the boss? Like, you would get the beginning value out of it, but you know, that could create some things like, I'm gonna pull trash into the boss, kite away, kite back in.
Yeah.
Um,
Changes routes.
yeah, so I mean, it would still, you'd be able to play around it with both fortified and tyrannical. But then something like, let's see, and these are just like off the top of the head ones. Some of them are more damage focused, some of them are defensive focused. I think it might feel bad if they're not all giving you some sort of damage. Um,
Not
so I think there would have to
necessarily.
be some kind of like middle ground where every affix kiss gives you like a little bit of damage, a little bit of survivability, and that way it just overall feels good. Um, and I think so. At first, when I'm going through these, I'm like, this is pretty much the same thing as this other one. I'm like, yeah, but the way you get it and interact with it is different. So maybe that's not bad that it's the same or similar, because you're still interacting with the affix differently, just based on the curse side of it and like how you're benefiting from it.
I think if you force gameplay, like sanguine, your suggestion for sanguine forces you to move the mobs again, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like your suggestion with the removing stacks for necrotic, and based on the number of stacks removed, that's the absorb or damage reduction that you get. Well, like that forces you to make a decision, right? You don't just flat get the same reduction or the same shield or the same absorb. Like it almost forces you to make bigger pulls and kill them all,
Exactly. Yeah. So, and it also doesn't punish the tank as much on those weeks, right? Where it's like, dude, tanks don't want to play on a necrotic week.
Right.
So, but if you do this to where,
Sup,
okay,
cheat?
it's necrotic week, I'm building up stacks, and I have to run away all the fucking time, and it's super annoying. Well, now it's like I get a huge benefit from doing this. So now this is fun to play. Now I'm like, okay, cool. I got 40 stacks. Not like, God damn it, I have 40 stacks and I've got to figure out how to get away from these fuckers.
I think
And
you
this
do
just
something.
isn't fun.
You could do
You
something
know.
similar with bursting too.
Oh yeah. So bursting is actually on there. So each stack of bursting. So as you kill enemies, you know, you get like a 4-second debuff that's dealing a lot of damage. Well, the proposition for that would be, okay, Kiss Curse. The amount of stacks that you drop gives you like a pretty sizable damage increase for like 20 seconds. And I kind of like that just plays into the word bursting, like, oh, we're bursting, you know? So,
Oh, I'm going to burst.
yeah, so it's bursty, you
Yeah.
know, whereas you could do something with inspiring or something. When you kill an inspired, everybody gets like a smaller damage buff for a longer amount of time or something, and that way you at least feel good for killing that inspired mob, and it wasn't like the annoyance wasn't for nothing.
Right.
So even the ones that I have written out, none of this matters, right? Like, you get the general idea that just come up with ways to interact with these where it feels good to play around the affix, and you're rewarded for doing so correctly. So like, there's still the risk if you stack bursting too high and you all fucking die, then you're not getting a buff,
Right.
right? Like, but if you can stack up seven times of bursting and then heal through it or survive through it and then go into the next pack with 20 seconds of uh you know, Jesus Christ, 21% extra damage, like that's insane. Like
Right.
you're gonna melt through that pack. It's gonna feel awesome, and you're gonna feel rewarded for that ass clenching moment you just went through.
I think something that we would see at like super high end keys, and we kind of see it already with like the value of defensives. I think there would be a case to be made for non-damaging kiss for the curse, like the kiss version, because
yeah, like this doesn't have to be exactly like these.
Yeah.
They don't have to be super overpowered. They just have to be something to where you feel rewarded for battling against the affix and winning.
I do like
You know?
the idea though that interacting with the affix properly is how you get the buff. It's not just
Exactly.
It's not
Yeah.
just get a flat
Yeah, you
damage
don't just
buff.
get it. Yeah, you don't just get it. And because the idea there is that you don't have to play against the affix, you get to. That's the goal, right? And I think it should be, you know, like you said, if this is the only affix we have outside of like Fort Tyrannical and then the seasonal affix, like it needs to be you're getting a lot for it and
Mhm.
playing a decent bit of skill into it to play against it as well.
Well, I don't know how much Lost Ark you played, but they have like a cube that's just like any other random dungeon
Mhm.
thing, but it basically has a chance to roll random positive buffs as well as debuffs, and it is fully random.
Right. So kind of like Torghast as well. The
A
way
little
it's
bit like
implemented now.
Torghast, yeah. But I love that sort of system, even if, because like in a random sense, because it's something that you're repeatedly doing and they're short, unlike Mythic Plus. But like, you know, it feels really bad to get like the 3 all negative debuffs, you know, in your run. It's like super hard. But then the next run, you've got that like, oh, I just got like 3 just straight buffs, and we are just absolutely just pumpers right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the kiss part is what's missing from Mythic Plus. Definitely. A little bit.
So, and then
I think that's really cool.
The way you handle the rotations is either we go down to a 10-week rotation, where you pick 5 of the Kiss Curse, and then you can just do it normally, right? It starts out as Tyrannical, Sanguine, and then by the time you get back to Sanguine on the 10-week rotation, it'll be Fortified Sanguine.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or we go with like 12-week rotation. You pick 6 of them, and then there's 2 ways to handle it. You either do like, okay, it's Tyrannical Sanguine, then Fortified Sanguine, then Tyrannical Explosive, Fortified Explosive onwards, or you would just have to manually switch them up for like the second 6-week interval. But I mean, we would still have a rotation.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would be a big deal. And then seasonal fixes at +10, keep them. Like they're bangers. There's been some stinkers, but even that has been, I think, as long as they learn from that. Because Prideful, like, it still had its ups. Like, there were still cool parts about it. But the community disliked it because of the percentage portion.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I think just keep pumping out dope-ass seasonal affixes. Keep that on there. Because that's still generally a kiss curse. Like, you have to deal with something and you get a pretty sizable buff. But I think having mini versions of that on the one affix that's on the key each week is also really nice.
Yeah, I just think it brings a little bit more variance to keys. Before I kind of get into my proposed changes, the one thing I would change about yours, and it kind of goes along with your getting rid of 4 and letting people play the affixes at higher difficulties just at base, I would maybe think about making the seasonal the first affix that you gain. And here's my reasoning for that. Because they're so impactful to the routes that you run.
Yeah.
People learning the routes earlier at lower keys, I think would help prevent some of the frustration and some of the hesitancy that, like, especially tanks, because tanks
for tanking
have to know the routes. Mm-hmm. So if you're just hopping into a 10, or at this point in the expansion, right, you're just hopping into a 15 to do your weekly, but you don't know the route because it's the first time you're dealing with the seasonal, and it's, you know, you've been running these low keys that you don't have to deal with it. Well, now you have to like learn the route when it's harder.
Yeah. And that's where you're going to start, right? Like, okay, I'm tanking. I'm learning this spec, whatever. And I kind of had the same thing. Like, I know the routes, obviously, so it's not that bad. But whenever I first started on my Guardian Druid doing that, it's like, it was kind of jarring going from a 9 to a 10, because I'm just like, oh shit, there's a whole another level now. Arguably, playing the base dungeon without that seasonal affix is maybe better too, so that people still have a chance to learn the base.
I'm not saying up front. I'm saying
outside of that season.
I'm saying make that the first affix that you gain is the seasonal, and then introduce the other stuff. Because I think the like investment of time and the chances of you clearing a low key if you fuck up the route are obviously way higher at a lower key, so you can let people learn, and like, oh, it's not a big deal if you pulled 120% trash in a 4, because you still clear it.
I think that's especially more impactful in this, like, seasons like this, or like Awakened from BFA.
Yeah,
like things that enable skips. I think that becomes a way bigger deal there. Like something like last season, I don't think that is like super jarring starting at 10, because it's just kill this boss and get a power.
Yeah.
And they're pretty obvious where they're at. They're like pretty obvious in the paths where you're going to be going anyway, so they don't really affect like low level routing. But also, Awakened and this season have been some of the biggest bangers anyway, so I kind of want them to continue on this route. So definitely learning the routes for that, because if you're just learning tanking and you do 7s, 8s, 9s, you're going to get flamed in a 10 or not know what the fuck you're doing.
Yep, I think it helps with some of that toxicity aspect around what tanks deal with, you know, in pug groups, because they may not know the routes, but like, how else do you learn a 10 except running a 10 right now? At least if you flip flop it, well, how do you learn the routes? Well, you can do it on a 4, you can do it on a 5, you can do it on a 6, where your chances of success and the like level of player may not be as high, and the expectations for you having a perfect route are all but gone, because you're going to clear the key. So now, okay, I get to try all these different, and it enables experimentation outside of the like top 1% of people who are route making, right? I'm in a low key, I want to try this crazy skip. Okay, well, now I get to kind of limit test it. I can test it in a 4, now I can test it in a 5, I can test it in a 6, and then carry that forward, and you get a feel. I think you get a better feel for the dungeons, and then now you're stacking on top of the seasonal. Okay, now I stack bursting, now I stack you know, whatever.
So Cheat said something that I want to argue a little bit, but I think Kiss Curse affixes as rotational only makes sense if they move away from the threat/reward model of the seasonal affix. I don't fully agree with that, but I mean, based on the way I've been talking, I would agree with that. But the rotational weekly affix being a Kiss Curse, it doesn't have to be big, like, at all. It could be the fucking smallest little thing that you don't actually have to play around with to get this like massive buff or anything. It just has to be something to where you're interacting with the affix in a way that feels at least somewhat rewarding and isn't just you playing against the affix. It just has to accomplish the goal, like I said, of getting to play the affix rather than having to play the affix.
Yeah, the goal is to eliminate.
It just needs to be an attitude shift.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, it's all about perception of the key.
Yeah, that's all it needs. It just needs to be something. It could be the smallest little thing. And I'm talking about, like, I think the one I have for explosive is a really good example of that. So explosives spawn. When you kill them, like, I'm talking like damage numbers right now. When you kill one, it does like 1,000 damage in AoE. That's it. Like, it does 1,000 damage in AoE. And that way it's not, at least, like, you didn't not do anything killing that, besides like you have to kill it because if you don't, it'll kill your group. But now it at least feels good to mouse over and tag that, and it's like, okay, well, I did 1,000 damage to all of these mobs, whatever. It doesn't need to be a lot, but just enough to like it feels good to play against this. You're getting some kind of benefit from killing that explosive orb. You
I
get
think
some damage
I think what you're
from doing it.
a lot of your suggestions go into like the player psychology aspect too.
Yeah,
Right? How do you
that's it. That's
incentivize
it.
players to do the mechanic? Right? Well, hey, if you
Exactly.
right in its current state, well, if you don't kill explosives, like do you wipe the raid or do you wipe the dungeon? Maybe not. You know, two
Right.
go off probably, but like you're just putting strain on your healer, but like what the fuck do I care? Fuck that healer. I'm DPSing, you know? But
Right.
now, even if it's like the smallest little, I mean, it's going to be impactful, obviously, especially you pull a big pack, you get 5 explosives.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
like,
and you're still gonna have people that like, oh well, that damage isn't credited to me, so I'm not. I still don't want to fucking kill them. But it's like
but
somebody
like,
like me, I'll still at least feel good. Like
yeah,
it's not
well,
gonna feel bad for me to waste time mousing over to frost shock it.
but
Like
how do you
I know that
incentivize
it's
the player to do it? Well,
right.
they get a little benefit, you know? And some players, to your point, aren't going to care. But I think the
Right.
vast majority, if they know, even if it's subconsciously, you know, click this, do gooder, do good,
Right.
you know,
Right.
do more,
Well, and
better
that's what I mean. Like
DPS.
the damage would have to be credited to
Yeah.
you from the
Well, that'd be
explosive
even,
orb for that to be the case. But
that could get kind of
like,
toxic, but that'd be fun.
right.
Like, nah, it's my fucking explosive. Like, I'm
Right.
coming to get
Right.
it. um,
Yeah, like they don't have to be huge. I'm not talking like it doesn't need to be like the bursting shit I was talking about where you're walking into the next pack with this massive, percent damage increase. Just something.
yeah.
And you could make these all purely defensive or like none of it's actually your percent increased damage by any means. It could just be small. It just has to be something.
Well, if people are worried, or the community was worried about like, oh, I get this damage that's not credited to me, well, then you could just make it like, oh, you kill the explosive, it puts a small debuff on the remaining mobs that are alive that do make you do 2% more damage to them for 5 seconds or whatever.
But to that point, that still isn't the only affix that's there, right? So it doesn't have to be huge,
Right.
because I like the way that they deal with the seasonal affix now. And she had a good point. Like if these were too impactful and too like the kiss was too big, you can't have that and the current seasonal structure,
It would
because then you
spiral out
have
of control.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like they're both kiss curse, threat versus reward, whatever.
Right.
Like they're both you're playing too much of it. But I think that this being kiss curse, as long as it's small enough, like, again, uh, we could still keep that same structure with the seasonal, which is great because they should, because it's awesome. But you do gain a lot of value from the seasonal effects over the past couple ones.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be like that level of impact, and I don't think it should be.
Right. So I like all your ideas there. Do I think they're gonna happen? I don't know if Blizzard's gonna do that. So here's what I was thinking that I think has a better shot of possibly happening. Even though I like your idea better than mine, I was just trying to come up with something that's more like closer to what I think they could do. So
Right.
we talked a little bit last week about our disagreement that they're not going to have all 8 season 1 dungeons as part of the rotation. So my suggestion, it has nothing to do with affixes for now, but all the season 1 dungeons are the 8 new dungeons. Then
Yes.
based on player
Please.
feedback and play rates, because I know they keep the play rates per key, then
Well, play rates are kind of weird too, because
it is affix affected.
well, the keys, the way
Right.
the keys roll. Yeah.
Or just, verbal or forum feedback or whatever on.
Right.
However
Something.
they gather their feedback. They have metrics for everything, I'm sure, and they read the forums. So instead of being set on a hard static number of old dungeons to bring in, season 2 and beyond, you maybe rotate out 2. It doesn't have to be 4.
Right.
Maybe 6 dungeons are fucking bangers, and why would we get rid of them? Right?
Yep.
But 2 are stinkers. So we're going to bring back, 2 dungeons from Legion or 2 dungeons from BFA or whatever. So I just really disagree with not getting to play the 8 new dungeons in season 1 and plus.
Well, and I understand why, right? Like, so they've heard from the community, you know, like, okay, well, playing the same 8 dungeons kind of gets old, but that's like a season 3 thing, season 3, season 4 thing. Like, season 1 and 2, that's not an issue. And no, we want the new shit.
Right.
Like, we want the new shit, especially season 1. Like, give us all 8 Dragonflight dungeons, please.
Yeah.
Season 2, yeah, like you said, like, what if all 8 dungeons are bangers? Like, even season 2, we don't necessarily need a shift yet. Like I said, I don't want to shit on this super hard because I love that they're wanting to try this, and like, this is definitely huge. But it doesn't need to be like a all the time thing.
Yeah, I love the idea.
Season 1, give us the 8 new dungeons.
Yeah.
And then season 2, yeah, like, if there are some stinkers, take them out, give us some old shit. Like,
maybe rework them a little
the
bit.
Pool a little bit.
Yeah.
It'll make that season feel a little bit fresh and unique, whatever.
So here's my fix for that.
And then season 3, definitely like shake that shit up a good bit. Like, keep in the bangers and freshen up the pool. And then season 4, like, do what you're doing now. Like, do a whole fucking revamp.
Yeah.
You know, that way.
So here's my suggestion and or fix, and a little bit of both. I think they should introduce new dungeons over the course of the season. I know that they keep saying they get negative feedback around that, and the mega dungeons are kind of hit or miss when they first come out, but I think they've all made for good Mythic Plus dungeons for the most part.
I think so. The only one that sucked was Cathedral in Legion. Fuck that dungeon.
Yeah.
Garbage dungeon.
Outside of that, I thought Mechagon was good. I thought the Return to Kara was good. I thought that the Tazavesh is all. I love Tazavesh. But except for the last boss of Streets, fuck that. Fuck the walls. Don't put any LOS things like that in the game ever again, please.
And don't make it block my camera, man. When it goes down to the four quadrants, I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude. My Storm Ellie is like fucking 200 yards away in another quadrant, and he's just, oh yeah, this is fucking fun. Jesus, man.
So here's my fix. You expand the pool instead of worrying about the dungeons themselves so much. You expand the pool of affixes. You either bring back some old ones that they have shelved, or you figure out ways to bring in minor versions of the seasonals, or just make some new ones.
I don't know that I agree with that. People don't get tired of the affix; they get tired of the dungeon.
But they change so much how you play the dungeons.
It doesn't. So do the seasonal affixes, and I still like, even with this seasonal affix versus last season's affix, I'm fucking sick of Theater of Pain. Like, there's no difference between season 1 and now. Like, I'm just fucking done with Theater of Pain. That dungeon sucks. Nobody wants to play a tie week on a 5-boss dungeon. It sucks, man.
Yeah.
I'm tired of playing it. Like, the affixes don't matter. It's the dungeons.
I think it would create a little bit of freshness, especially for, the competitive side of things, changing it up every season, not only the seasonal, but you get a new pool of affixes to play around with.
I do think the idea of shaking up the pool of affixes is a good idea, especially with something like this, where if we only have 6 per season, like, that's actually a really good idea. So adding that to like the layout I have where we only have 6, come up with like 9. We have way more than 6 right now, so just add Kiss Curse effects to the whole pool, but give us 6 each season and let that roll over.
And I'm not saying just don't worry about rotating, because I do think that bringing the old dungeons back is good, but I think it can be both. Why not come up with new affixes and outside of the seasonals? Or
no, definitely both, just not only.
The overall goal should be, how do we make players continue to want to engage with our content? Well, you have to change the content enough to keep it fresh for 2 years. Essentially the expansions last 2 years now. So like, either you need to add a fuckload of dungeons every patch, or one a patch or whatever, or you have to come up with other things that you can do. And I think that's where either a rotational pool, even if it's 2 affixes, 3 affixes, you know, bring out the ones that people hate, like fucking quaking or whatever,
right.
for a season to give everybody a reprieve. You're like, okay, this season has no quaking. Okay.
Yeah. And so I think that that's good. Like, but it can't just be that. They have to, and that's why I don't want to shit on this idea of them like changing up the dungeon pool each season 2, because they definitely need to do that. Like, I've been fucking nobody likes DOS, dude. It sucks.
Yeah.
The dungeon it's so long. Stop it. Like, I want that out. So just the fact that they want to do that, take out the stinkers, they need to do that for sure. Like,
Yep.
I'd have been happy if this season I didn't have to run TOP and DOS. Like, if those 2 dungeons were fucking out of the pool for this season, it would have been awesome.
Yep.
Like,
So
but
that
it needs to be both for sure.
that's basically my fix for that and my take on it. So I really like the kiss curse thing. I hope that something like that happens, even though I don't think it will. But
Well, thankfully, there's been actual content creators and actual
yeah, people who
streamers.
actually have an audience.
Yeah, they have said that, and that's where I got the idea, and that's why hopefully that takes off, because this is coming from, you know, big mythic plusers like MDI competitors,
Yeah.
Growl, and Dorky, and Ellesmere was talking about it as well. Like, hopefully that sticks, coming from
You
them and putting it out there.
might be an expert at transitions, because MDI, and talking about MDI, transitions into the next piece that I wanted to talk about. Unless you have anything else you would like to say on Mythic Plus.
No, I think that's covers it.
So here's my ask, I guess, and my question to you is, does Blizzard do enough of those types of events for its own good, to be honest? Like, the highest during, I guess it's a couple different things. During Race to World First, between Max's channel, Echo's channel, and the actual like Liquid channel, and then some of the lesser guilds, they dominate Twitch viewership for like 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So that is drawing a bunch of players back, because whenever I take my breaks and it happens to coincide with a race, I always immediately resub, because I just get so hyped watching it. So not only are you bringing old players back, you're exposing like a whole new audience, because I read their chats, even though a lot of them are super weird and toxic and stuff, but there are always like new people who have never played WoW before who are watching this, because they get front page, they hop up to like the recommendeds because there's so many viewers. So is WoW missing building a player base and recapturing, I guess, some of that massive community, being like this cultural shift type game that like BRs are now, right? Like, everybody talks
so
BRs
first of
and
all,
stuff.
I mean, they don't have to do anything for that, and they're getting that. So,
And they're not involved in
right. I mean,
in
should
race.
they be? Is that your question? Like,
Well,
with the Race to World First specifically?
I know a lot of the guy like Max and the Echo guys, they don't want Blizzard to be involved, and I understand
because
why.
that would be terrible. It would ruin it. It wouldn't be what it is.
But should they be propping up MDI and thinking harder about some of the changes that we've suggested to keep it fresh, doing more
think they
events?
have, though.
Well, I mean,
I think they have been, like, slowly but surely, because they've tried a couple of different like ways of doing it. So now we've got MDI and we've got the Great Push.
Yeah.
Which, like, the Great Push got huge, and
Yep.
I think the fact that keeping that around, and then they tried one more like style. I forget what it was, but it's basically like they're all trying for speed, but like up on the board.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Fuck, what's it called? There's a third one.
Okay.
So there's the MDI, the Great Push, and then there's another one that they've tried.
So here's my point, is that, are they not doing it regularly enough with I'll use Path of Exile as a good example. So every time a new season comes out for Path of Exile, there is and if people who are listening, or if you're not familiar, Hacked, I don't know if you are, there's usually a gauntlet that's put on, which basically uses the in-game tools and the in-game league system that they do. And the new leagues, every season, they call them leagues in Path. It's a full reset, or a chance to full reset. And there's basically a race. Ben from Liquid, Exile from Liquid. There's a couple Method guys. They all participated in it. So like if you are a WoW fan and you know those people, they also take part in the Path race. And Ben Lighty, his old name from Liquid, usually wins them. But GGG, who's the developer, like works hand in hand with the creators to basically like do interviews, promote the gauntlet. It gets a ton of new faces and a ton of new people downloading the game. Now it is free. So
I do get what you're, I think I'm starting to understand. Should they be promoting MDI, the Great Push, all of this more outside of those windows, rather than should they be doing more of them? Because I think they still do it seasonally, like once or twice a season, depending on like the AWC as well. Like I always go balls deep in AWC when those are streaming.
Yep.
Like I watch that shit religiously. But then like MDI, the Great Push, those are fun to watch too. I think that they do enough of them, especially like for the players, right? Like I don't know that the players would even want to do them that much more frequently.
That's fair.
Because they need time in between.
Yeah.
So I think the way the seasons work out now is great. But I think that they should push and promote that shit more for interviews and stuff.
The thing that it kind of got me thinking about is like, well, this new season has the faded raids as well. So like, it's not going to be as big as the Race to World First, but like put an event together around it, you know?
Right.
Do something to give people a reason to watch on Twitch, because as we have seen, like big creators and big audiences on Twitch, I think they made a mistake too by going to YouTube for MDI and AWC as like their main platform. I think they should go back to promoting Twitch on like the launcher and stuff. It's just a bigger audience for live streamed events. I think it's fine. Like you can restream it to YouTube, and obviously the VODs will be there and stuff. But I think leveraging Twitch, leveraging promotion, I think can bring some of the subscriber base back. And what happens when there's more people playing? Well, it's more revenue. It means faster changes. It means that there's more people interacting with the content, giving opinions, and we potentially get bigger, faster changes. And I'm basing that on
I don't know that would affect all of those things or any of those things in any like meaningful capacity. It definitely like more people to give
for every million,
that doesn't matter.
For every 100,000 people,
they haven't been listening to the good feedback for fucking years anyway. What add more feedback for them to ignore?
I'm trying to not be jaded, okay?
No. So I just want to back that up with thank you, Blizzard, for listening recently.
I was gonna say it seems better.
No, not to shit on what they're doing right now, because pretty much since 9.2 fucking 9.1.5, like they've been killing it so far.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like take away from that too much, but
so I just think they have an opportunity, I guess is what I should say, to capitalize on the viewership, partner with some of these big guilds. I think the thing that Liquid and Echo put on themselves, where they like basically gave themselves their own affixes in the raid and like raced. I don't know if you remember them doing that.
Yeah.
And it was kind of silly stuff too. But like,
that was cool. And I think that they should stay out of the Race to World First.
Yeah, agreed.
Just because I think it ruins the integrity. Like, and I only mean like they need to stay out of it as far as like no tournament realms. It needs to be the live game.
Yeah.
Because like they just can't get that involved where they actually put it out there and sanction it in any way. And add rules and blah 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 outside of just regular TOS. But I do think shit like that, like what you're suggesting, and what they did, where they raced, because they used to do that stuff. Like after the Race to the World First, they used to have events like that where the two top guilds would like race in a farm clear and
Yep.
see who wins. So yeah, I think that they should get more involved as far as that, but not get involved in any way, shape, or form with the actual race to world first.
No,
But, like
and
halfway through the tier, set something up with some of the top guilds for
Mhm.
something cool like that. Definitely.
Well, I think that just brings excitement back because, like,
Yeah,
as
for
soon
sure.
as everybody sees Liquid rerunning a raid, right? Then people are like, oh, let's do our, like, let's get in there, let's re-clear as well because Liquid's re-clearing. Like, there's so much
Yeah.
power behind these big orgs, and I don't know if they even realize the influence that they have over people. But like,
Oh yeah,
I
I
hang
don't think
out.
they realize the extent, but yeah.
I hang out in a bunch of like the Max's Discord, Growl's Discord, like those types of like that influences, it exists. Like,
Definitely.
and I think that on a larger scale, Blizzard could be partnering with a lot of these orgs and making the content maybe last longer, especially during these down seasons where
Right.
there's like they're long or something
I
else
don't
is
think
going
that they
on.
should put that much effort into it for that reason, though, to like make the content last longer, because that we need the length of the droughts to definitely stop.
Yeah.
Like that is the only thing that's going to save that issue,
Right.
right? Like, so I think it might help a little bit, but I still don't think it would get rid of the issue. Like right now, I don't want to step foot in Sepulcher anymore. I'm
Yeah.
pretty much fucking done, man. I will, like, just to get people AOTC and what? This is an excuse to hang out with my friends. Oh no.
We got
You know,
Outriders to play, dude.
yeah.
I've
Dude, I get sick, by the way.
that was really my only point on that. I would also like to see
Yeah.
maybe some more
I think that they
community
should
events.
do it not for any reason of like any of the perks. I think that they should just do that because it's cool.
Right.
So I agree there. Like promote the game, whatever, and also just it's fun shit. Not even for promotion, but for your community that's here playing, like, and for their community as well that is there watching. So I think just getting in on that would be fun.
I think it'd be cool if
involved.
some of the big content creators were able to put on like their own events too. Like,
Yeah.
I think that would be awesome. So, we'll see. Hopefully, some people do more of that. I have a kitten.
Kitty.
What? Yeah. Hi. Say hello to everybody. We're podcasting. That was kind of my last thing, but then when we were talking about this, I remembered one more Mythic Plus thing. So we're gonna circle back. And you're gonna go on this journey with me.
Okay.
So I've heard a couple of the content creators and the Mythic Plusers express the want for like all of the raid buffs or all of the individual party buffs that are given to be given when you step into a Mythic Plus. And even if you don't bring a Lust class, like you get a button for Lust when you're in Mythic Plus only. To, I think the purpose and would be to eliminate the need to bring
Because
comps, right? You would have more
it's not
varied
even
comps.
the need to bring them, because you could still bring them like if they're good. It just I don't know, like I think everything but Lust actually kind of makes sense for that. Because I mean, Lust you have Hunter, Shaman, Mage.
Right.
I mean,
Or
give Dragon's Lust too.
or
Give Dragon's Lust, and then it's not even an issue.
or
but-
just make drums be full Lust.
right.
You know why? Like, I get the reasoning behind it, because like then it takes away the value of those three classes. But like, it's in a raid, it doesn't matter because chances are you're gonna land on one of those three classes. But in a Mythic Plus, there's a good chance that you don't get a Lust. You know?
Well, so I think Lust is like the smallest version of that, because I think that building your group comp should matter a little bit, but I also feel like a lot of it feels bad for like decurse shit too, right? Like, yeah, I don't know. I think getting all of the buffs or just getting rid of fucking class buffs again.
I'd be fine with that too, but
One of the two, either
yeah.
yeah. Well, especially Mythic Plus being on like the same playing field and just being a skill expression, but it's still a utility expression, which I guess I wouldn't consider missing out on Lust being valuable utility. So I think I could agree with that.
Yeah, I think the
And
button.
then you can still, tailor your comp around the utility that they bring. It just we there's a fine line, and you have to make sure that you're not over homogenizing all the
Right.
specs. And that way, there's still some importance in building your comp.
I think Mage, Hunter, and Shaman do enough outside of the lusts that there are reasons to bring or not bring them. And if the only reason that you're bringing them is for a lust, like, I don't know if that's a healthy spot for the game to be, because it makes groups take longer to form. Like, you see even now a little bit, you see like, oh, need lust in these key groups. Well, if you don't play a lust class, like, well, I just go either start my own group or find another group, but there's no shot that group ever accepts me.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and I think that's good because it puts everybody on the even playing field outside of like, oh, what extra buffs were you able to get based on your group comp, whatever.
Yeah. I'd be all for the lust button. Just make it the extra action button or whatever when you step foot into Mythic Plus. And then I would also, I mean, they could redo lust in a whole bunch of different ways. Like, I think of all the like externals, like lust is so uninteresting. Like, push button, do haste. Like, it's just like, it's kind of weird at this point in the game where they've like kind of re-looked at everything for the most part in a lot of cases and like made it more dynamic or interactive with what you're doing and how you're playing. That's why like the class static buffs are kind of weird. And
I don't know. I think I disagree with that. I think Lust is still in a cool thing, like, and it's not even based around its effects. It's just like, here's an OP effect, but the kicker is 10-minute cooldown, so your placements matter. Especially in Mythic Plus, I think the placements are like figuring that into your routing is
super important. Yeah. It's just more, I'm talking about the actual application of it, like, is just okay. Like, great. I push a button. It can't go sideways. It's only a positive thing. Like, it just does this buff for, this duration.
It definitely can be a bad thing.
Well, it shouldn't be, but
can be though.
I think I would be in Mythic Plus only big in favor of giving everybody just a lust button. Final Fantasy, you could compare it to like Final Fantasy's limit break system. Like, I think that could be a good change for lust. Like, in general, you just get rid of it from the game, and then you basically, depending on what you need. So in Final Fantasy, like, whoever pushes the limit break, if they're DPS, tank, or healer, a different effect happens. Okay. So like, if you need a damage reduction, big button, okay, well, you have the tank push it. If you need the DPS portion, you have DPS push it. If you need the healing, you have the healer push it. So it becomes like a group decision and not an individual decision. And I think that in itself is more interesting. And then that kind of just builds right into, Mythic Plus or Raid, I think would be pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So
like, what do we need and where?
Right.
We've got this big buff. Where do we want it?
Well, and it kind of falls into the lust category. Like, most of the time you're just having the DPS push it because, big number, better person type thing. But there was
damn doers do damn.
Yeah, damn doers do damn, baby. The faster the boss dies, the less you have to tank.
Yep.
But there was a fight recently that, like, the mechanics these groups were having a hard time figuring out, and like, the solution was for the tanks to actually push it. So it did have like an interaction where that was the solution to the mechanic was, use your limit break on on this mechanic, and then there's 3 levels to the limit break, so you actually have like different break points and like more effective the longer you hold it. So I think that system would be another thing that they could potentially steal and improve upon just the 1 button lust haste
Wowify.
buff. Yeah. Yep.
Just wowify it.
Yep.
No, definitely.
So yeah, I think that's all I've got. You got anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, that's yeah, pretty much my closing thoughts would just be profession systems dope.
Mm-hmm.
We need some kind of change with the Mythic Plus. Just get rid of an affix at the very least. Try to add some small kiss to the one affix that's on the key.
Yeah.
Fort and tie are fine. Just nerf the fuck out of tie, please. Like, keep it up with the seasonal affixes. That shit's dope.
Yeah, I like it. I will send that to my contacts at Blizzard immediately, and we'll get all those changes implemented for you. And then when all those things happen and everybody hates them, it's Hakkd Gaming on Twitter and Hakkd13.
He stole those ideas.
Nope, they were all his. Don't try to blame Growl. It was all you. All right, man. Well, thank you for another good episode. And
for sure, dude.
Thanks everybody for hanging out and watching. Same thing as last time. I'll cut up the VOD and throw it up on YouTube for everybody to see after the fact. And yeah, we'll catch y'all later. Peace.
Peace out.